AITA for kicking my MIL out of our house after she refused to call our son by his name. So my husband, 34M, and I, 31F, recently had our first child, a beautiful baby boy we named Elijah. Choosing his name was a big deal for us. We spent months going back and forth, testing different names, saying them out loud, imagining how they'd sound when he was older, picturing them on future school forms, job applications, wedding invitations. You know, the whole process. We love Elijah. It had a deep meaning to us. It sounded strong and timeless. And when we finally decided on it, it just felt right. When we announced the name, my MIL 62F didn't seem particularly excited or upset. She just kind of shrugged, didn't gush over it, didn't make a comment, which honestly felt like a win because she's the type to have opinions about everything. So we figured, okay, she's fine with it. Oh, how wrong we were. The first red flag happened at the hospital the very first time she met him. She picked him up, cradled him, looked down at his tiny little face, and said, "Oh, little David, you're just perfect." I was exhausted. I just gone through labor. I was emotionally and physically drained, so at first, I thought I misheard her. But then she said it again. I frowned. "Who's David?" She smiled like she had a secret and said, "Oh, I just think he looks like a David. It suits him better." I was too tired to argue, so I brushed it off, thinking it was a one-time weird comment. But it was not. Over the next few weeks, she kept doubling down. She would text us things like, "How's my little David doing today?" Or "Give David a kiss for me." When she visited, she'd pick him up and say things like, "Grandma loves you, David." She even started telling other people his name was David. At first, my husband and I tried to ignore it, hoping she'd drop it if we didn't acknowledge it. But that only seemed to encourage her. One night, she called and asked if we could FaceTime because she missed David. When we answered, she went full grandma mode, cooing, making baby talk, and saying, "Oh, my sweet David, look at you." At that point, I had had enough. I interrupted her and said, "His name is Elijah." She gave this fake little laugh and said, "Oh, I know, but he just feels like a David to me." I told her, firmly, that we picked his name for a reason, and it was really disrespectful for her to keep calling him something else. She pouted, but said she'd try to remember. She didn't try. A few days later, she showed up with a knitted baby blanket with the name David embroidered on it. I looked at it then at her and asked, "What is this?" She beamed. "I made it for my little David." I was fuming. I handed the blanket back and said, "His name is Elijah. If you can't respect that, don't bring him gifts with the wrong name on them." She sighed dramatically and acted like I was being unreasonable. My husband, to his credit, told her it was weird and she needed to stop, but he wasn't as firm about it as I wanted him to be. He was in the "she's just being quirky" camp, while I was in the "she's outright disrespecting us" camp. But the final straw came during a family dinner. We invited MIL, my SIL, and some extended family over for a small dinner. Everything was going well until she kept calling him David in front of everyone. At first, I tried to stay calm. I gave her pointed looks, hoping she'd get the message. I even corrected her a few times, but she just brushed it off. Finally, my SIL looked confused and asked, "Wait, why do you keep calling him David?" And Mile laughed, like this was all some adorable joke, and said, "Because that's his name to me." That's when I snapped. I put my fork down and said, "No, his name is Elijah. And if you can't respect that, you don't need to be here." She rolled her eyes and tried to wave me off like I was some overly emotional, dramatic child. But I wasn't having it. I stood up and said, "I'm serious. If you can't call him by his actual name, the one his parents gave him, then you can leave." She looked shocked, like she couldn't believe I was actually calling her out. But she left without much of a fight, muttering about how I was overreacting. And now, my husband is mad at me. He agrees that his mom was being weird and disrespectful, but he thinks kicking her out was too extreme. He keeps saying I should have just let it go, that she wasn't hurting anyone, and that I'm blowing things out of proportion. But I don't think I am. This isn't about some silly nickname. It's about control and boundaries. She's actively refusing to acknowledge our son's actual name. That's not a harmless quirk. That's disrespectful as hell. Of course, Emile is now playing the victim. She's telling everyone that I'm keeping her from her grandson over a nickname. Some of my in-laws are taking her side, saying she's just an excited grandma. Why are you making a big deal out of this? But others? Others are just as weirded out as I am. My SIL, for example, told me privately that she thought MIL was being bizarre and overstepping. So now I'm stuck in this awkward situation where half the family thinks I'm a monster and the other half thinks MIL is losing it. Reddit, AITA for standing my ground?